When I first picked up the iPhone Air, I experienced something that I typically don't feel anymore when handling a new iPhone model. I felt genuine excitement and amazement for how this phone looked and felt like something that shouldn't be technologically possible or even feasible. And after a month later of using this device, that genuine shock has not went away. So what is it about the iPhone Air that made me realize that even as impressive as this phone is, even as much as I love using it, why it isn't the right phone for me just yet? Because if you've been watching the channel, you know I boldly claimed my excitement for this phone before it was released. I was really excited when I saw it at Apple's event, and I even said I plan to use this as my main phone for the year. But during that declaration, I also told you that I would be honest with my viewers, and if I discovered something during my use of this product that made me not end up picking it, well, I would tell you. That is my job. I am here to give you an honest opinion, and you know I always will. And here's what many reviewers won't tell you. The form factor of the iPhone Air is now the best iPhone design that Apple has ever done. And if we are reviewing it just based off its outward design, this is the best iPhone model for most users because it actually solves a huge issue that I and many people I've talked to have had with modern day smartphones. It fixes the unwieldy nature of a big phone. What I mean by that is that the iPhone Air is a big smartphone. It has a big 6.5-inch display that puts it right up in line with the previous Pro Max models. But unlike the Pro models, which have always been thicker and much heavier, the Air combines a lighter weight design with incredible thinness, which gives it three big benefits in real-world usage. First of all, making a phone thinner with a larger display means that you can comfortably wrap your hand around the entire phone, making it easier to use and manage one-handed. Something I could never fully get used to on the other larger Pro Max model. The best way I can describe how the Air feels is it feels like you're holding just the display panel, not really holding a phone at all. It is the closest experience I've had to that vision that Apple always talks about of just holding a sheet of glass in your hands. Finally, and strangely, you gotta hear me out on this one, it runs cooler in the hand than the iPhone 17 Pro. Yeah, that's hard to believe considering the Air uses titanium and is much thinner than the Pro, and we know this chip thermal throttles. But one of the ingenious design decisions that Apple did with this phone is they put all the brains of the phone in this camera plateau here. So when you're using the phone, all that heat that the phone generates, because it is generating heat, is up in this camera area. But that is a place where you don't grip the phone, and it doesn't transfer to the bottom of the iPhone Air, where basically that's where the battery is. Like this whole bottom part is all battery. So you don't really feel the heat of this phone, which actually makes it extremely comfortable to use. And one of the perceived weaknesses of the Air was that it was going to have really bad build quality and durability, but that's not the case. This is the best build quality on any iPhone model right now. The phone feels engineered to perfection. It feels precise. You can tell there is not a single bit of wasted space in this entire design, and the Air even looks and feels more expensive than the Pro models, which has a lot to do with that amazing look of the polished titanium frame. And in a strange twist of irony, the Air ended up being the most durable iPhone model, with the Pro iPhone now getting the main concerns with durability this year with the Scratchgate scandal. And I hate to spend so much time on the design of this phone, but really, that is the main reason you would buy this phone over the iPhone 17, because this is a more expensive phone that technically loses out on some features that even the base model has. So you have to admit that if you're buying this phone, you are buying it for how it looks and how it feels. It is a unique experience, right? And many tech-oriented reviewers are gonna just look at the specs. They're gonna call you kind of stupid for that decision. They're gonna say it's a bad value, and they are right that it is a bad value, but I think Apple fans in particular do appreciate a good design, and they will spend money on a product that is well designed. Design is often an experience that is usually forgotten about when it comes to tech products, but it's such an important factor. The better a product looks, the better it feels, the more impressive the design looks inside and out, the more you're going to want to pick it up and use it. the more joy you're going to feel when you handle it. And one of the reasons I waited so long to publish this review on the air is because I did want to take my time with it. I wanted to see if the feeling of this new design got old and started to feel normal, just like another smartphone, to the point of non-appreciation. And that hasn't happened. Every time I pick up this phone, I'm still wowed by it. I'm still just crazy about this thin design. And I marvel how Apple was able to fit an entire iPhone, complete with an A19 Pro chip, into this design. It is a feat of engineering. And other people are marveling too. I've owned a lot of iPhones in my time on this channel. I don't think anyone has ever stopped me before on any other iPhone model to ask me, is that the new iPhone? Yet this is what happened multiple times in my days carrying around the iPhone Air. People took notice of this design and they stopped me to ask me about it. And when I let them see it or let them hold it, they marveled in the same exact way that I did. That's not something that's easy to advertise or even easy to convey to most users who are going to maybe pick this device up at a store while it's still tethered to one of those anti-theft devices. You're really not gonna get a feel for how this phone feels to use. And to understand the appeal of the iPhone Air, it's one of those things that you have to hold to feel. It's not something that can be listed on a spec page. I think that's also true of the iPhone Air simplicity. I think for most techie people, we would list the iPhone Air's single camera system as one of its biggest cons. And I do count myself as one of those people. Don't mistake me, right? Like, I would want more cameras on this device. However, there is also something nice about how simple this camera system is that really brings you back to the experience of using the original iPhone, because there's not a bunch of different lenses in the camera app popping up. You don't have to worry about the main camera automatically switching to the macro mode, and then you don't know how to disable that. I can't tell you how many times people I've seen, like, they don't understand why the camera lens is switching and they want to disable it. They don't know you can disable it in settings, right? You don't have to deal with the thought in your head of, oh, should I take this photo with the main wide camera or should I take it with the ultra wide camera? Which will look better? And you don't have a lot of those other video modes that most people don't end up using, like cinematic video mode or spatial video, that can honestly just really confuse the average user, especially when they switch to those video modes by accident. Simplicity might end up being a feature that some users might care about. And the primary 48 megapixel camera, it is capable of taking some really great photos and some really good 4K video that honestly even covers like 80 to 85% of my photo and video needs. And when it comes to other specs, the Air is still pretty impressive. Having the same front-facing camera that is on every new iPhone model, it is a big improvement, and having the same great 3000 nit 120 Hz ProMotion display as all of the other iPhone models. And despite its ultra-thin design, it still even gets the A19 Pro chip over the regular A19 chip, which I think would be more beneficial to the average user because it feels just as snappy as the Pro model. And even though, yeah, it can thermal throttle, I don't think most normal users are ever going to really make it thermal throttle in a meaningful way. But the more important part is it does have an increase of 12 gigabytes of memory over the standard 8 gigabytes on the normal 17 model. So that can make the phone feel a little bit more responsive, especially when you go to use it after like putting it down and your app like doesn't have to reload. Like, it's still loaded in the background a lot of the times. And I think that's like a really good user experience. However, that is when the benefits end and the compromises start to add up. I think one of the big compromises that would have been a deal breaker for most users, no one would care how thin this phone is if it had bad battery life. And I won't say that this phone has bad battery life. In fact, I've seen a lot of people online say that this phone has surprisingly good battery life. I think a lot of people were kind of taken in by the leaks saying that Apple was struggling to get battery life to be good on this phone, which I don't think turned out to be necessarily true. Now, while I will say the battery life is good, probably better than expected, I wouldn't also say it's like top tier. I would say I get through a normal day of usage with around 4 to 5 hours of screen on time, with background streaming included. So around like 4 hours of background streaming, probably around like 10 hours of real world usage. Like, I can make it through a full day, but not with battery to spare. I end almost every night with this phone approaching 0%. It's 8 o'clock now. This has been off the charger since like 7 a.m. this morning, and we're at 5% battery right now. So that's kind of like a typical real world day for me. So the battery isn't a disaster like most people said it would be. I would say it's probably pretty comparable to the normal iPhone 17, maybe like a little bit worse. But for a power user like me, it still isn't the battery life I'm used to, especially coming from a Pro Max model. So good, but on those most demanding days, maybe not the most reliable battery life. And it actually made me understand why Apple, despite including the A19 Pro chip on this phone, chose not to ship ProRAW photo and ProRes video capabilities. It wasn't because the Air wasn't powerful enough to use those photo modes. It has the same chip as the Pro, it can obviously do it, but the Air really is built around efficiency. And if you start to chip away at that efficiency because of the small battery, I think it starts to kind of fall apart quickly, because when you shoot ProRes video and ProRAW photos, well, that takes up significant more battery than just using the normal photo modes. Speaking of the camera, again, as someone that is used to the Pro models, I do miss those Pro camera formats, especially after seeing how good they look on this year's 17 Pro. And I gotta be honest with you, I wasn't expecting to like the 4x telephoto lens as much as I did on the new 17 Pro, but I do. And I've missed it when I've been using the Air. Like, I took the Air to a concert, I had to rely on digital zoom to get a photo on stage, and when I was looking at it, I was just like, man, if only I had my Pro, I'd have a much cleaner shot right now. And of course, I miss having two speakers. There's only one on the Air, and at loud volumes, it can sound really tinny. It's fine occasionally for scrolling through some like short form video, but try and jack up the volume on a movie trailer and you'll see why it really just doesn't cut it. However, despite my criticism and my realization that this iPhone might not be the right one for me and it might not be the best value for most consumers, I don't think that will always be the case. When Steve Jobs first pulled that impossibly thin MacBook Air out of that manila envelope for the first time, it evoked a similar emotional response that I have had the first time I started using the iPhone Air. But just like the current iPhone Air, the first MacBook Air was riddled with compromises at an extremely high price point. Actually, looking at the iPhone Air today, it is a more complete product that makes sense for more users than that original MacBook Air did. And despite those compromises with the MacBook Air, Apple didn't give up on that product. Over time, they added more features, they dropped the price, and now the MacBook Air is the default MacBook option. It is probably the best valued MacBook for most users. The iPhone Air deserves that same time to be innovated on. It can add more cameras. It can pack in a larger density battery. It can add another speaker. It can add software features and get a faster port. And eventually, it can probably knock down the price, maybe in a future where the iPhone Air actually becomes the normal iPhone design, because technology does progress, and eventually Apple will be able to make an iPhone Air design with little to no compromises. But for now, as much as I love this phone, as much as I love this design, again, I have to acknowledge this isn't the phone for me right now. And I think even for people that pick this phone, you have to acknowledge that it isn't the best valued iPhone when you look at it on a spec page. But for some people, that won't matter. Most people will pay to have an upgraded and refined experience that they can't get anywhere else. Some people will pay more for the future today. And if that's you, this is the phone for you, because it really does feel new. It feels exciting. And I kind of envy the people that do end up picking this phone and it fulfills all their needs, because I am dying to stick to this form factor. Who's cutting onions? I'm not getting emotional here. Anyway, I hope this video helped you out. If it did, please leave me a like. If you want to see more, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to find out why the iPhone 17 Pro did ultimately win me over, it's a little bit more complicated than the Air, just didn't fulfill my needs. You can find that video here. If it's up, hopefully it's up. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you in the next one. Technology's amazing. Look at this. Like, look how far we got. I may use this phone sometimes. You know, it might not be my main phone, but I can't deny my SIM might be in this phone a few days out of the week, maybe. I like it that much.